Today, we're going to talk about a movie where a boy falls in love with his friend's mother and makes multiple attempts to get close to her and fulfill his desires. The story begins at a school where a teachers' meeting is held to start the new academic year. In this scene, we meet a literature teacher named Germain. He gives his students an essay assignment, asking them to write about their weekend in a creative way. At home, Germain reviews the essays with his wife, Jean, who makes a living selling bold and provocative sculptures. Jean looks at the essays and comments on how poorly written most of them are. Germain explains that he wanted the students to write creatively about their weekend, but the results were ordinary. One student wrote about buying a toy gun at a fair, and another wrote about eating ice cream. But one essay, written by a student named Claude, grabs Germain's attention. Claude writes about going to his friend Rapha's house, pretending it was to study for a match. He reveals how he had been curious about Rapha's house for a long time, often watching it from the outside. On this visit, he finally sees Rapha's mother, and her appearance fills him with excitement. Claude then plots to use Rapha's struggles with schoolwork as an excuse to visit their house more often. Despite her concerns, Germain, fascinated by Claude's talent, decides to mentor him, unaware of Claude's hidden motives. In later essays, Claude continues to write about his growing obsession with Rapha's mother. He describes staring at her photo on the wall and imagining Rapha's father as a roadblock in his path. Claude even enjoys seeing Rapha's parents argue, thinking it might bring him closer to his goal. Germain begins to worry about Claude's behavior, but dismisses it as typical for a boy his age. Meanwhile, Jean repeatedly warns Germain to stop encouraging him, but Germain doesn't listen. Claude manipulates Rapha's schoolwork to ensure he remains essential and can keep visiting the house. Jean pressures Germain to intervene, but Germain is torn between helping Claude improve as a writer and dealing with the ethical concerns. Claude's obsession deepens as he imagines scenarios where Rapha's parents' conflicts work in his favor. His essays grow darker, but they always end with, "to be continued." The tension rises when Rapha's mother starts to sense Claude's true intentions. She insists on hiring a new tutor for Rapha, effectively banning Claude from the house. This devastates Claude, leaving him anxious and desperate. He convinces Germain to steal a math exam paper from the school so Rapha can score well and avoid being assigned a new tutor. Reluctantly, Germain agrees, further entangling himself in Claude's schemes. Claude uses the stolen exam to ensure Rapha does well, securing his place in the household once again. However, his increasingly bold and manipulative behavior leads to more trouble. Germain starts to deeply question his decision to support Claude, but feels trapped by the consequences of his earlier actions. He begins to see the darkness in Claude's writing, which reflects a dangerous obsession and a willingness to cross any boundary to achieve his desires. As the story progresses, the line between mentorship and complicity blurs, leaving Germain grappling with the moral weight of his choices. His unwavering belief in Claude's potential as a writer blinds him to the alarming implications of his actions. The film takes a chilling turn as Claude's manipulative nature and obsession spiral out of control, leading to a series of shocking events. Viewers are left pondering the thin line between talent, morality, and obsession. Rapha's parents, however, remain oblivious to the danger lurking within Claude's intentions. They see him as a bright, helpful young man who has improved Rapha's academic performance. Grateful for his tutoring, they suggest Claude continue helping Rapha with math. While Claude outwardly appears pleased, he feels a deep unease, knowing his obsession with Rapha's mother is steering him down a risky path. Rapha, aware of Claude's influence on his family, casually warns him to stay away. He cryptically mentions Germain's wife, Jean, and her provocative sculptures, further muddying the waters. Germain doesn't understand Rapha's remark, but the pieces of this puzzle start to fit together later in the story. One day, Rapha invites Claude to play basketball with him and his father, a bonding moment that seems innocent. Claude quickly declines, realizing that this is the perfect opportunity to visit Rapha's house while his mother is alone. As soon as Rapha and his father leave, Claude heads straight to their home, armed with a pretext. He rings the doorbell, and Rapha's mother answers. She tells him Rapha isn't home, but Claude claims he's only there to retrieve a math book he left behind. Rapha's mother lets him in to search for it. As they look for the non-existent book, Claude begins to weave a story, playing on Rapha's mother's emotions. He notices her earrings and mentions they look just like the ones his mother used to wear before she abandoned him. Touched by his vulnerability, Rapha's mother begins to feel compassion for the boy. They sit down to talk, sharing a drink as Claude carefully builds a connection. While Rapha's mother sees a troubled young boy seeking comfort, Claude sees this as a step closer to achieving his desires. At home, Jean becomes increasingly alarmed by the situation. She tells Germain that Claude's obsession will only lead to disaster. She warns that Rapha's parents will uncover the truth and that Claude's actions could ruin lives. Germain brushes off her concerns, claiming she's overreacting. He insists that Claude is simply an imaginative, talented boy with a flair for storytelling. Jean, however, isn't convinced. The next day, Germain shows Jean another essay from Claude. This essay is darker than the ones before, detailing personal and troubling emotions. Jean explodes in anger, accusing Germain of being too focused on Claude and ignoring their marriage. She even suggests Germain may have inappropriate feelings for the boy. Germain denies the accusation, stating he's only invested in developing Claude's talent. Jean dismisses his defense, bitterly remarking that men often lose sight of what matters most as they grow older. In his latest essay, Claude describes a moment when Rapha unexpectedly kisses him. The essay hints at Rapha's growing jealousy over Claude's close relationship with Germain. This revelation sheds light on Rapha's earlier cryptic warnings. Claude also describes sneaking into Rapha's parents' bedroom, watching them during intimate moments, and imagining himself as part of their relationship. These disturbing details hint at Claude's escalating fixation on Rapha's mother and his complete disregard for boundaries. Claude's writings grow bolder and more invasive. He listens to Rapha's parents argue, seeing their conflicts as an opening for his schemes. After one heated argument, Claude seizes the opportunity and hands Rapha's mother a letter he had prepared. The next day, she reads the letter and calls Claude to confront him. The letter is shocking, filled with inappropriate confessions of his feelings for her. She warns him about the consequences if Rapha's father ever finds out. Claude, undeterred, tells her the letter wasn't for Rapha's father. It was for her alone. In a shocking twist, Rapha's mother kisses Claude. The kiss complicates the already fragile situation and adds a layer of moral ambiguity to the story. However, their brief moment of connection is interrupted by Rapha, who witnesses the kiss from outside. Devastated by the betrayal, Rapha retreats to his room and, unable to process the emotional turmoil, takes his own life. Claude writes about this tragedy in his next essay, ending it with his trademark phrase, "To be continued." Germain is horrified by the essay and rushes to school to confront Claude. He learns Rapha isn't at school that day due to the tragedy. As Germain processes what's happened, he realizes the extent of Claude's influence and the chaos it has caused. Claude continues to write, revealing new details in each essay. In one, he describes how Rapha's mother confesses she is pregnant, which rekindles her relationship with Rapha's father. This leads Rapha's father to fire Claude as Rapha's tutor, barring him from their home. But even as Claude loses access to the family, his essays continue to end with the ominous phrase, "To be continued." Germain tries to stop Claude, forbidding him from writing more essays or visiting Rapha's family. But Claude defies him. He visits Rapha's house one last time, where Rapha's mother meets him outside. She returns the letter he wrote and tells him their relationship was a mistake. Claude, heartbroken, begs her to run away with him. She refuses, calling him a child and explaining how much his actions have hurt her family. Devastated, Claude confronts Germain. He visits Germain's house, where Jean answers the door. Claude manipulates Jean, planting seeds of doubt about Germain's loyalty. Feeling neglected and vulnerable, Jean gives in to Claude's charm, and they have an affair. Claude documents this encounter in an essay and leaves it at Germain's house. The next day, Germain is fired after Rapha's father informs the school about the stolen exam paper. When Germain returns home, he finds Jean packing her bags. She accuses him of prioritizing Claude over their marriage and says she can no longer stay. Left alone, Germain reflects on how his trust in Claude has destroyed his life. In the final scene, Germain sits on a park bench, looking defeated. Claude approaches and sits beside him. Germain sarcastically asks if Claude has come to ruin what little remains of his life. Claude, unfazed, stares at the windows of nearby houses. As Germain watches, he realizes Claude is already imagining his next story. Did you enjoy the recap? Please like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be updated next time we drop. Thanks for watching.